This review contains summary and all spoilers of Crushing by Genevieve Novak. Like Green Dot, it's another novel about a woman who pursues a man who isn't single. Marnie pursues Isaac. Isaac is a finance bro who seems rich, super handsome, and has a girlfriend named Tash. Marnie and Isaac flirt and have an emotional affair. Then eventually it culminates in sex, upon which Marnie seems to focus on her own life and forget about Isaac for a bit. Then Isaac starts begging Marnie to be his new girlfriend, and the ending is that she successfully revitalizes her boss's restaurant and rejects Isaac. Also, she ghosted her friends and family and fought with everyone, but by the end of the book, during the redemption arc where she is fixing her life, she is made up with all the people in her life. I'll try to condense the 368 pages as best as I can. The reviews to this book were generally positive, 6,000 ratings at 3.77 and a little over 700 reviews. If you look at the reviews on the first page, you'll see that Crushing is less about an affair and more about displacement. Marnie uses Isaac as a fantasy container for everything she won't face in her own life. And some of the reviews talk about how it's a self-sabotage novel disguised as a romance. The affair matters less than how Marnie completely burns her real relationships to keep it going. If you compare Crushing and Green Dot, they both share a male archetype, but they have radically different moral framing. Isaac is punished after the woman is healed, not before. The 368 pages are broken into roughly 42 chapters, although some of the chapters are extremely short. The entire book takes place from Marnie's point of view. 3 things happen in the first chapter. First, you see that Marnie's life is falling apart. Her longtime boyfriend, Eddie, has dumped her, and now she's effectively homeless as well. Second, you're introduced to Nicola. Nicola is Marnie's sister. She will be a recurring character who provides support throughout the book. Finally, you're introduced to Mitch. Mitch is Nicola's husband, and he is the textbook example of weaponized incompetence. He has his little man cave, and he often refuses to help or pretends to be really bad at helping around the house, forcing Nicola to take on more stress and burden. In Chapter 2, after Marnie's breakup, she has moved in with her sister, Nicola. Nicola has a husband named Mitch, who doesn't really help. Marnie seeks emotional support from her sister and mother, but she's still pretty sad because the breakup is so recent. Marnie works at a restaurant named Little George Gastronomia, which is owned by Kit. Kit is a grumpy older gay man who secretly has a heart of gold. Not really, he's just pretty grumpy most of the time. Chapter 3 is about how Marnie is done with men, and the big evidence in Chapter 3 is about Mitch. I saw through his weaponized incompetence, and he saw through my thin-lipped tolerance. Marnie is living with Nicola and Mitch, her sister and her sister's husband, and it's pretty clear that Mitch tries to hide in his office or in his man cave and avoid helping around the house, and Marnie sees this and knows that he's doing this, and that's why she doesn't like him. Chapter 3 ends with her complaining to her sister Nicola and swearing off men forever. Chapter 4 begins with Marnie talking about how she misses having a boyfriend because being a single girl means that you're subject to a bunch of instability. In the middle of Chapter 4, it's clear that Marnie is looking for a new place to live so she can move out of her sister's house and get away from her sister and Mitch. By the end of Chapter 4, she meets Claud, who's going to be her new roommate and her new bestie. Marnie and Claud sound like they both agree that they're going to be happier as single women. But throughout most of the book, Claud ends up chasing a toxic guy who keeps dumping her in an on and off again relationship, as Marnie has to watch how it emotionally destroys Claud. Chapter 5 establishes some bonding between Marnie, her sister Nicola, and her new roommate/landlord Claud. Claud tells Marnie that Marnie needs some hobbies now that she's single to distract her from that. You could learn a language, offered Claud, so you can understand Javier's Spanish dirty talk. You could do a floristry course or creative writing, take up taekwondo, and become the vigilante Princess Hill has been waiting for. Chapter 5 ends with a reminder of Mitch's weaponized incompetence. Mitch, Nicola's husband, can't put the baby to bed. He doesn't know the bedtime song, so he starts spamming her phone to force her to do it. Chapter 6 talks about how Marnie has been living with Claud for a month now, and they're becoming besties, and that Claud is helping her heal and accept her status as single woman. Claud and Marnie go to a bar together with the intention of effing a hot finance bro. At the bar, a super hot man named Isaac approaches her. Isaac is from Brighton. Brighton was exclusively home to posh twats whose egregious generational wealth made you want to declare yourself a communist. Isaac and Marnie have some flirty banter about a gimp suit, and she can't help but notice how incredibly hot he is. Christ, he was really hot. Great bone structure. Eyes the color of the perfectly ripe avocados I never seem to find. Wait, that's stupid. Greener than, Little George's branding? The mint in my drink? Shut up, Marnie. Whatever color his eyes were, they barely left mine to blink. I learned that he was an investment product expert, whatever that meant, and he thought my laugh was cute, which only made me do it more. After they flirt for a while, and she keeps noticing how incredibly attractive he is, she leans in to kiss him, and then he says, "Oh," said Isaac. He stepped back and I lost my grip on his shirt. I should say, I have a girlfriend. I should have said before, well, why didn't you? It didn't come up. We were just chatting. I just think you're cool. You're obviously very attractive. It's not that I'm not interested. So right here, he's trying to play that he has plausible deniability, pretending like they weren't just flirting heavily. The chapter ends with Isaac declaring that they are just friends, and Marnie is a bit mortified and leaves, hoping to never see him again. Chapter 7, Marnie is at work. She has a lot of responsibilities, things are a bit chaotic, and it introduces her coworker Sam. Once upon a time, Sam would have made perfect sense as a rebound fling. He was cute, inoffensive like a teddy bear, with the kind of soft, open features that suggested he wasn't capable of deviousness. He was a fraction of an inch shorter than me and in denial about it. Even though Marnie and Sam are co-workers and it's inappropriate to flirt, Sam relentlessly pursues her and she resents him a little bit because of that. Unexpectedly, Isaac shows up at her work. She accuses him of stalking her, but he insists he's not. She says, "Figure it out, Isaac. I don't want to kiss you." The other people note how incredibly attractive Isaac is and assume that Marnie and Isaac are going to be dating. Isaac keeps insisting that they could be just friends. He gets Marnie's number and they agree to text each other before he leaves. Chapter 8, Marnie is hanging out with Claud, but then Isaac starts texting her. "Good morning, bestie. Did you have sweet dreams?" "Yeah, of you." "Ew, can you imagine if I talk like that?" "Maybe that's why you don't have friends. Rude. You're just too cute for them to handle. They stay away for fear of getting cavities in your presence. I can't help that I just exist adorably." So they're clearly having this kind of emotional affair that's inappropriate as just friends, but they're both in denial about it so far. More text messages between Marnie and Isaac. "Nothing like listening to a married couple argue over baby food to make you want to take a vow of celibacy." Isaac, "I thought your personality was your choice of prophylactic." Marnie, "Wow." Isaac, "Oh, shut up, you know you're fantastic." The subtext of this conversation is that they are talking about sex again. Even though they're just friends, they have a clearly inappropriate flirty banter going on. Now Claude comes in as the voice of reason. We've been texting non-stop. But what about your rule? I knew this would happen. Didn't I tell you I'm never single for long? I'm not sure he's not actually amazing. He's definitely just hot. Why don't you screw him out of your system? Because I like him too much to not fall in love with him. And, yeah, tiny thing, he has a girlfriend. Claude looks unimpressed, and where was she when he was chatting up girls on a Thursday night? Good point, no idea. Poor thing, she has no idea her boyfriend sucks. Maybe they aren't serious, I said. Maybe it'll fizzle out and I can get tired of him guilt-free. How long have they been together? A bit under a year, not that long. And how old is he? Nearly 30. Why? You might have missed your window. Once they hit 30, relationships last 2 dates or 5 years. You don't know, said Claude. They could have an open relationship. Monogamy might not be important to them. She could be texting some guy right now. You don't know, and it isn't your job to know. Their relationship is none of your business. Or you'll ignore all his red flags and boring white male bullshit and only pay attention to the scraps of evidence that help you convince yourself that you belong together. Start masturbating to his Instagram stories, rewrite your ethical code, and get completely obsessed with him to the point of imploding your own life and require medical intervention to stop. So we know that Isaac is super, super hot, and Claude points out, why is he approaching women at a bar if he has a girlfriend? Which is a good point. But then they start rationalizing and saying, well, maybe they're in an open relationship or something, because Marnie wants to sleep with him and Claude is encouraging this. This is where it gets a little bit delusional. Chapter 9 is about Marnie trying to find things to do that don't revolve around men. She talks with Claude a bit. Claude is on a dating app, and Claude is looking for a new boyfriend. How tall is he? His profile doesn't say. I snorted. That means he's short. I'm short, said Claude. He could be 5'6" and he'd tower over me. The rest of the chapter is that Marnie goes to a cycling class, and she's not used to exercising, so it's really difficult for her. But the emotional text is that she's trying to distract herself from the fact that she's single, and she doesn't want to think about men. In chapter 10, Claudia's on a date. She's going to end up with some guy who keeps abusing her, basically, and they're going to have an off and on again relationship. Seeing that Claudia is on a date, Marnie gets lonely and calls Isaac. He answered on the first ring. I need attention, I announced. My housemate has abandoned me and I don't know what to do with myself. Sounds serious. What's at stake here? Depression, hysteria, bad choices. I might cut a fringe or call some guy I met in a bar. Heaven forbid, said Isaac. I could feel his amusement through the phone. Would he be dangerously good-looking? Have impossibly thick hair? Spicy superlatives. Have you been reading the girls' trashy romance novels? Marnie and Isaac have been communicating more off-screen, and Marnie tries to dig up information about Isaac's girlfriend. All I knew was her name, Tash. He didn't have any social media, hot, so I couldn't narrow it down from his friends list. Tash alone wasn't enough to dig up her profiles and learn everything about her, analyze it, and decide how I felt, so I stayed infuriatingly in the dark about it all. Marnie tries asking Isaac about his girlfriend, but he's vague and just says that she's at her place. Then they have more flirty banter, which is clearly inappropriate for being just friends. How many boyfriends? Could I take them? Too many, but I'm done with that now. Why? I don't believe in relationships anymore. That's why you don't believe in relationships. It's not your broken heart. I don't have a broken heart, I scoffed. I'm just detoxing from a severe case of dick paralysis. Isaac choked on something. I heard him splutter and take a moment to regain his composure before he asked, What? I'd tried to be mysterious. I'd been so good about mastering the urge to overshare and present myself as ever so slightly out of reach. But it was bound to come up eventually, and besides, we were friends. Friends talked about their lives. If Claude knew about it, if Nicola did, then why couldn't Isaac? Tales of rampant monogamy might have scared off a potential boyfriend, but a friend wouldn't care. This part is delusional. She acts like there's nothing wrong with the fact that she's having all this sexual flirty talk with a super hot guy who hit on her at a bar and has a girlfriend. Marnie continues to have an emotional affair with Isaac anyways. If anything, he reinforced my resolve that someone could have a girlfriend, be loyal to the point that they reject a kiss from a cute stranger, then go on to talk to them every day, lie in bed on the phone, and reach new depths of intimacy when the moon came out. It only poured concrete into the belief that happily ever after was a falsity invented by romance novelists. I could see all of his red flags. There were so many of them. Where was the harm in chit-chat? My time and brain and body belonged to no one but me. He wasn't unavailable. I was. I got to enjoy him for what he was without ever having to entertain the prospect of disappointment. It wasn't real, so it couldn't matter. So she knows that they're having an emotional affair. Right here she admits that it's inappropriate, but she continues anyways. I lay there on top of my sheets, listening to his voice like honey on a hot spoon, oblivious to the emptiness of the house. It was so easy, so fun to play the coy and unattainable girl he wanted me to be, making crass statements, then backpedaling under false shyness. And when we'd run out of conversation, and before I knew how many nights I'd spent replaying this one, he gave me a list of movies to see. So this is the end of the chapter. They're having an emotional affair. She knows it's wrong, but she continues anyways, and they continue to develop this relationship together. Chapter 11 is about Claude's dating woes. So she went on a promising date with an attractive guy, but now the guy seems to be ghosting her. She had to keep a portable charger on hand from running down her battery by obsessively checking for a response. 18 hours later, she was spiraling. What had she said? What had she done wrong? What was the exact moment, the exact phrase she used, the expression on her face, the lighting she was casting that earned this cold-hearted rejection? So this part is supposed to be evidence of the duplicity of men, how they can seem like they're really into you, and then they can just ghost you the next day like nothing. I'm going to skip over the rest of the chapter because Kit continues to be the grumpy business owner and Marnie's boss, and Sam continues to relentlessly pursue Marnie. Chapter 12 is pretty skippable as well. It's about Nicola's baby turning 1 year old, Layla, and there's a birthday party for her. Marnie and Nicola's parents show up. They are separated. And there's a little bit of a disaster with the cake falling apart. That's about it. This chapter only contains a bit of the family dynamics that Marnie feels a little bit less favored than her sister Nicola in the eyes of their parents. And Mitch continues to be annoying, useless husband. Marnie and Isaac continue to have inappropriate, flirty text. Chapter 13 is Marnie and Claud going to get a psychic reading together. Marnie is very skeptical about all this pseudoscience stuff, but Claud is pretty into it. The psychic says, "There's an opportunity for great love here. It's your job to keep your expectations of it realistic." It took everything I had not to slump back and say, "Oh, come on." It was all too perfect, too rehearsed, tailored for the app-swinging, horoscope-reading, burnt-out 20-something caricature of her audience. So the psychic gives them some vague, cold-reading advice, saying that they're going to have major love decisions to make, and Claude's super excited about it, but Marnie's very skeptical. I bet that isn't even her real name. It's probably Louise. "Why are you being so negative about it?" she asked coldly. "Who cares if you don't buy into it? You don't need to tear her apart. It's so easy for you when you have Isaac wrapped around your little finger." I paused, frowning. I do not have Isaac wrapped around my little finger. Some of us need more guidance. Okay, I'm sorry. It's all right. In order for Claude to feel better again, she has to hear that things are going to work out with her new boyfriend, Jesse. Chapter 14, Marnie goes on a date with Isaac, although they don't want to call it that. Today's the day, moment of truth. Do we really get along without the crutch of alcohol and the comforting anonymity of screens? Or will we have an absolutely terrible time, realize we're only good on the phone, and make an excuse to leave and then politely never interact again? We're about to find out. This is obviously framed as expectations for a date. So they go on a date to various locations, and then she invites him in. "Do we need to talk about it?" I asked, shattering the silence. "About what?" I gave him a knowing look. He sighed. Do we have to? Maybe talking about it will be so uncomfortable it cures us. Of what? It's a crush, not chlamydia. A crush can turn into chlamydia if you aren't careful. Ooh, talking about STIs is killing my boner. What do you think about herpes? I think it'd be a shame to not be able to be mates just because one of us is spoken for. Spoken for, I snorted. You have a girlfriend, not an owner. He didn't rise to my bait. He set his cup down and asked, why do you say girlfriend like it's a slur? Hey Fowler, that's Marnie's last name. Isaac is speaking here. Do you think I have... He leaned over the couch cushion between us, a wicked look on his face, and breathed, big dick energy? I dipped a finger in my tea and flicked it at him. Here, Marnie asked directly about his girlfriend. Does she know about me? He cleared his throat. Sure. What does that mean? She knows we're friends. Do you think this is it? I asked the big one. Do I think Tash is the one? Yeah, I replied. Is she? And he says, I don't know. I don't know if you ever really know. Marnie says, that all sounds great and everything, but you're full of shit. Waiting for a sign. You don't want to be responsible for your own actions. Isaac reached over, picked up his teacup, and clinked it against mine, and as I watched the strain of his bicep, I bit into my cheek until I tasted blood. Clearly just friends. So chapter 15, Isaac is ghosting Marnie again, so now she's focusing on her other relationships. Claud firing screenshots of her never-ending conversation with Jesse at me, proof of his perfection. So Jesse is Claude's new boyfriend, but they're very hot and cold with each other. The restaurant is having some financial troubles, so Kit is pretty upset about it. When it was only Claude messaging to Moon over the double kisses trailing Jesse's description of his lunch, my heart dropped so low, even 2 more pancakes and the machine gun rapidity of Sam's compliments couldn't scrape it off the footpath. Claude is really infatuated with her new boyfriend Jesse, and Sam continues to try to chase after Marnie unsuccessfully. Chapter 16, it's back on again with Isaac. He contacts Marnie again and says that he's in the doghouse for a bit, which implies that things are not going that well with his girlfriend Tash. There's more scenes here with Sam, her coworker, who keeps trying to flirt with her, but they're not that important. Chapter 17, Marnie has a one-night stand with a guy named Steve to try to distract her from Isaac. Claude is busy with her new boyfriend Jesse, so Marnie starts texting Isaac about her booty call. Marnie, I've done something extremely stupid. I have a man coming over for a booty call. Do they still call it that? I'm too old for this. What do I do? Isaac, who's the lucky boy? Marnie, some guy, it doesn't matter. What happened to I have standards? Sometimes a girl has needs. What do I do? Use a condom. So Isaac doesn't seem to care that she's having a one-night stand with this random dude named Steve. Steve was shorter than my memory of him and built like a bulldog. So they have very, very, very disappointing sex. Steven jabbed at my cervix with a lone determined finger. I realized that casual sex was not as exciting as the first season of every HBO show made it out to be. I didn't come like an opera singer hitting a high note. I faked it just to get it over with. Except for the sore nibble, I felt no difference in my body either. No pang of loneliness in my stomach or sharp barb in my chest longing for his approval. All that came was relief that I didn't have to keep pretending to enjoy his touch or company. Steve says, thanks for a fun night. So chapter 17 seems like she tries to sleep with Steve because she's lonely, and when she tries to get a reaction out of Isaac from it, it doesn't seem to get much of a reaction. Isaac and Marnie have a call together. They have this habit of calling each other late at night and talking for hours. I like talking to you when I can't sleep, he said. Sometimes I can't sleep without talking to you. So this is more inappropriate emotional affair between them. Chapter 18, Claude is just talking about how much in love with Jesse she is, which turns out to be pretty disappointing because Jesse turns out to be abusive, and they have this on and off again relationship that's really toxic. More flirty texting with Isaac that's totally inappropriate. Isaac, what's got you so thirsty? I haven't sent you any shirtless selfies, so question mark, question mark. The chapter ends with some rejection from Isaac. Marnie, anyway, boring, how's your day? Isaac, date night, talk later. Hot tip, don't whine about your life, or your imaginary crush will be so turned off that he'll run into the arms of his real-life girlfriend. Great, no Claude, no Isaac. Chapter 19, Marnie claims that she thinks someone's in the house, and so she demands that Isaac come over immediately and check. Marnie, can you come over? Isaac, I think the phrase you're looking for is, you up? Marnie, I'm serious, I think there's someone in my house. I heard footsteps in this demon-y voice. Can I use a butter knife in self-defense? How have you made it to 28? Do you really need me to come over? Hurry up. Okay, so Isaac actually shows up, and she's thinking this is suddenly the best night of my entire life. Number of times I have thought about this exact moment defies human comprehension. Every single thing you do makes me like you more. Obviously, this is an emotional affair. They are not just friends. Okay, so once they realize there's nobody in the house, they start flirting again. Do it, validate me, don't pinch my nipple, ow. It was the most sexually charged prodding and tickling event since the dawn of pastel-colored male fantasies. By the time we'd slapped each other away, my cheeks ached and I could tell I'd gone pink, but I didn't care. Who even are you? Asked Isaac, inches from my face. Your dream girl, I told him dryly. Don't I know it? His hand hovered over me for a moment, and I wondered if he was going to touch my face and kiss me or rest it low on my stomach and F me, and I didn't know which I'd prefer. So yeah, this is extremely inappropriate. They are very obviously having an affair. They are not just friends as they keep trying to deny it. Nothing happens, he leaves, but she masturbates to him until sunrise. Chapter 20, she hangs out with Claude and they have a fight because Claude keeps checking her phone for work. Why are you so upset? I'm upset that I made space in my day for you and you can't even give me your full attention for a couple of hours. She scoffed. It's not like we're doing anything, we're just hanging out. Why can't I check my emails? I would have gone to my class if it wasn't going to make a difference to you. The context is that this is the beginning of Claude having troubles with Jessie. Jessie is ghosting her, giving her the cold shoulder, or they're fighting about something, so that's why Claude and Marnie are back to hanging out with each other. And they fight with each other. More super inappropriate flirting with Isaac. Isaac, you have an opinion about everything. Good God, you're mouthy. Marnie, would you want me any other way? Isaac, I want a lot of things to do with your mouth. Yep. Chapter 21 is all about Marnie being a third wheel on a date with Jessie and Claude, so she finally meets Jessie. Marnie, I'm officially third wheeling Claude's date. A fun look at the rest of my life. So then she hears Jessie's viewpoint. Don't you have any female friends? Jessie says, not when I'm in a relationship. I don't think it's appropriate. Marnie and Jessie are arguing over whether men and women can be just friends. Jessie says, so you agree with me, men and women can't be just friends. And Marnie says, that's not what that means. So Jessie's very annoying, and he says some misogynistic crap. Jessie observed me for a minute, conflicted, like he was irritated to the point of amusement. You're a bit contrary, aren't you? Only when I'm right. Men don't like argumentative women. I don't give a ugh. I don't base my personality around what men like. Okay, Claude squeaked. Let's relax. Jessie says, I think that's willfully naive. Can you have an honest friendship when attraction is on the table? You can't. It's built on a lie. Marnie says sarcastically, you're so right. Men and women can't be friends. My platonic relationships with men mean nothing. I'm a liar and an idiot. Thank you for showing me that. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to read this argument because the way it's framed, Jessie is clearly not a good guy. He's annoying. He's misogynistic. This is the beginning of a long abuse arc where he keeps making Claude cry, and they have a very hot and cold toxic relationship. But here it almost seems like Jesse is correct by chance that men and women can't just be friends as far as it applies personally to Marnie. But Marnie tries to argue that they can and that Jesse's an idiot, which is generally correct, but not true in her specific case at the moment. So it seems hypocritical or contradictory. I'm not sure which side the reader's supposed to take away. So they continue to fight, and it basically ruins the get-together, the dinner. And they point to Marnie specifically. Well, you and Isaac aren't just friends. Sex actually does get in the way of your friendship, even when you're not having it. Just the fact that you both want it so bad. She says, that is so unfair. People aren't helpless. We're not horny monkeys following our crotches wherever they lead. If someone, I could hear myself getting shrill, doesn't believe in self-control and emotional depth, maybe that's something they should be worried about. So the fallout is that Marnie and Claude are disappointed with how things went. Claude is sad that Marnie and Jesse fought instead of getting along, and Marnie seems to be psychologically defensive about this whole debate about whether men and women can be just friends. Chapter 22, she's on a picnic date with Isaac. Marnie complains about how things went with Claude and how Claude's boyfriend Jesse is super annoying. Then, at the end of the date, Isaac says, "This is always fun," he said, rising to meet me. "No matter how tough my week has been, seeing you always makes it better." "Why have you had a tough week?" I asked. "You didn't say anything." He smiled and shook his head. "No need, all better now. 'Cause of me, 'cause of you." I reached out to smooth out the neck of his t-shirt where it had folded against his collarbone, and he beamed. So, more super inappropriate flirting. "You're okay, Fowler," he said, and threw his arm over my shoulders as we began to walk. Despite the chill, my entire body felt like it was a scorching summer's day. I promise I'll never disappear. Chapter 23, Marnie is invited to Isaac's 30th birthday, and Claude says, "Are you prepared to meet the girlfriend?" This section is about how Marnie is supposed to feel jealous and view the girlfriend as competition for Isaac, which totally goes against the whole "we're just friends" framing. This explicitly seems like Marnie is trying to steal Isaac from his girlfriend. So Marnie and Claude arrive at Isaac's 30th birthday party, and it's very fancy. Remember, he's like a rich finance bro who has everything you could want in life. Marnie sees Tash for the first time. I knew her before I knew her. Even with no prior awareness of her appearance, blah blah blah, I knew it was Tash. Maybe it was the curtain of creamy white gold hair hanging down her back, or the tinkling laugh that cut through the saxophone and sounded like the diametric opposite of my goose's honk of a guffaw. Claude knew it too and squeezed my hand for support. So basically, Tash is super attractive, just like Isaac, and Marnie feels completely crushed because she feels like she can't compete with his super attractive girlfriend. Gosh, up close, she was really something else. Had she never had a pimple in her life? Was there some new treatment that allowed you to install warm lights under your skin? I'd always used my eyes as a fallback source of pride when I otherwise felt unattractive, but hers were bigger and bluer and brighter still. I searched for a single flaw, an uneven eyebrow, a smudge where her contour hadn't been fully blended out, blah 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 blah, but nope, nothing. She was perfect. She didn't even have the decency to be unpleasant. Now Marnie's feeling super insecure about how amazing Tash is compared to her, even though all they did was say hi to her. And then Claude reveals that Jesse and her are having a fight. Claude gets mad at Marnie because Marnie starts criticizing, how could Jesse do this to her? How could he hurt her? I don't want to control your life, Claude, I said quietly. I just don't want you to get hurt. Well, it's my hurt, it's mine. Just back off. Look, I'm gonna go, she said eventually. You have a great night. Coming second. Chapter 24, she feels very crushed by the fact that Isaac's girlfriend seems to be amazing. She tries to message Steve for some sexual validation, use him as a booty call to get her confidence back again, but he doesn't seem to reply. Then she runs into Sam when she's super drunk. Sam, I cried, but I came out silent against the pulse of the music. Fancy seeing you here. So she's super drunk and she comes on to Sam. This wasn't a transaction. He liked me. He really, really liked me. He said so all the time. No matter how deep the bags under my eyes were at 6 a.m. or how rude I was to him any time of the day. I looped my arm around his neck and kissed him right on the mouth. So this incel guy who's been harassing her at work, her coworker, he just happens to be there when she's at her low moment of feeling extremely insecure, and she starts making out with him. Chapter 25, she continues making out with Sam, and they actually go back to his place to have sex. I'd never spared a thought for the way Sam might have lived. He was clean but cluttered. Furniture made from wood pallets. Okay, so then Sam surprisingly does not rape her, even though he seems like a very horndog type character. And he says, like, what's going on? Like, you seem super upset. You're upset, he said, and you're really drunk. I just don't think it's a great time for us to hook up. And so her attempt to get validation by hooking up with Sam fails. And she leaves in a huge rage. She breaks some stuff. God, I cried. I'm so sick of it. Of you, men, you're all bullshit. Marnie, please calm down. Okay, then she goes home and she pukes, and this night has been utterly humiliating for her from her point of view. Chapter 26, Marnie tries to make up with Claud after their fight, but Claude's ignoring her. Claude's reading her messages, but she's not replying. Then at work, things are really awkward because, remember, Marnie threw herself at Sam the night before, but Sam rebuffed her. So now they're fighting at work, and Kit comes in, the boss, and he's like, why are you guys fighting? And Sam reveals that Marnie's going through some stuff, and she tried to throw herself at him, and it didn't work. Marnie actually feels like she almost gets fired here because she makes a huge scene. Oh God, he was firing me, but not really. Are you serious? I asked, barely daring to believe it. I can come back. If I never have to hear about Sam's problem-solving penis again, you can come back. So her boss doesn't fire her, but she does have a big breakdown at work. Marnie continues texting Isaac. That was some party. I think I might be allergic to wine. She's trying to excuse her behavior. Isaac, Marnie, how was Miss Perfect's night? Isaac, I don't know if that's cool. I joke. So she's still insecure about Tash. She continues trying to text Isaac, but it's one-sided and he's not really replying. Marnie continues texting Isaac. Look, I'm sorry. I know I made it all weird and awful and yuck, and I crossed a line and made a fool of myself, and I regret it. I hope you didn't have a bad night because of it. Can you just answer me? All good. Can we have dinner call tonight another time? So at the party, she tried to flirt with Isaac openly, and he totally rebuffed her because his girlfriend was right there, which is a bit of a gaslight because if he acts totally different when his girlfriend is around, that's a huge red flag, and he knows that he's being deceptive. Marnie tries to call Isaac. He doesn't answer. She says, I miss you. Chapter 27, Isaac still wasn't answering, and it was making me desperate. This part, Marnie is just replaying in her mind what happened at the party and how he rejected her. Validate me, I'd cried, and he had responded, ew, no. Now Marnie goes on the dating apps, and she tries to have some rebound dates to get over Isaac. More heightism. She swipes on this one guy just because he's tall, I guess. On the dating app, she doesn't get any matches for 15 minutes, so she starts mentally spiraling because she feels like she's unlovable. Why wasn't it enough? Why had I never been good enough? For him, for Ian, for Guillaume, for Thomas, for Martin, for Eddie, for Claude. Choked on a sob and realized I'd been crying. I'm sorry about everything I said into Claude's message bank. Please come home. I just really need you right now. Okay, then after ghosting her, Isaac says, Fowler, I'm so sorry for the disappearing act. Can I see you? And then, chapter 28, abruptly, they're just back on a date together again. She accepts him back, no questions asked. This was by far the sexiest, most pretentious bar I'd ever been to. It was Isaac all over, sleek and a bit private, glamorous and inaccessible, towering above Melbourne with a sly wink. Isaac let me soak in his rejection for days, 13 days, without ever assuaging my shame. But all he had to do was ask, and I'd come running. Made me want to pluck the drink out of his hand, throw it in his face, and storm out. Okay, so now they're on a date again, but she's a bit cold to him. He tries doing his flirting again. He says, personally, I find a few drinks improve the technique of my hip thrusts. I ignored him. He was determined not to cave to my cold shoulder. No matter how sharp my tone or stony my expression was, he remained relaxed. I had no right to be this upset with him. I'd given myself away. I was petty and jealous and obvious. I'd pushed the limits of plausible deniability, and it had sent him running, and I had no one left to be angry at except myself. And he keeps trying to flirt with her, and then finally he reveals that things have been tough since the party. I don't know, Tash isn't a shouter, but it isn't good. She wants us to see a therapist. Marnie says, I'm sorry to hear that. Isaac says, she wants to look through my phone. She thinks it's an admission of guilt that I won't let her. She got nothing to accuse me of. Isaac says, Tash doesn't want me to see you anymore. There it was, the silver bullet to our friendship. So Isaac's girlfriend thinks that he's cheating with Marnie, having an emotional affair, and she's correct. But Isaac tries to deny it. And the fact that he comes running to Marnie to tell her all this is basically an admission of cheating, because why would you tell her instead of working it out with Tash? Somehow, suddenly I was winning. All these long months, the push and pull, the cat and mouse, the seduction dance, the constant battle for power, it all came to this point. I was pirouetting on it. I had nothing to lose. I had already shown my hand and had accepted its humiliation. I'm here because I had to see you, he said finally, because I can't not see you, because I can't help myself. So that's when it all went south. They get back together again, basically. And here's where their emotional affair culminates in actual physical sex. What happened next wasn't so far off. Soon we were kissing again. My place was only a 15-minute drive away, but he couldn't wait that long, slapping down his credit card at the desk, pressing himself against me in the elevator, blah, blah, blah. So they consummate their affair with sex, and then they fall asleep together. Chapter 29, they've just had sex, they've consummated their affair, and there he was, all of him. Good God, he was hot. Never gone for that before. My boyfriends had been distinctly odd-looking. They were cute at first glance, but you became less sure the longer you spent with the details of their faces. Blah, 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 blah. I liked that about them. Personality had to make up for what their genetics lacked. But here, this Isaac, it was unnatural, like wanking off a Renaissance painting. All his smooth lines and milky skin and the indecent curve of his top lip under a day's worth of stubble. I lay there on my side on the heavy hotel sheets, and I ogled. So she views Isaac in this fantasy frame that he's somehow going to fix her entire life just by being with him. It was all going to be easy now, everything. Uncertainty erased, career woes banished, plans for the rest of my life sorted. I'd have someone to talk to and eat dinner with. I was sure now I loved him, I did. Then she realizes that he's on the phone with his girlfriend, he's texting her. I drummed my fingers on his stomach to get his attention. You okay? Yeah, sorry, just... He had an absence to account for. There was someone else who noticed when he didn't answer, who he wasn't allowed to ignore for days on end. That's when she realizes that she just helped him cheat, and she just really hurt Tash with this and that she enabled him to cheat on his girlfriend. This is a disaster, I said, near tears as I hugged my arms. This is the biggest mistake of my life. Marnie tells him, you have to choose, Isaac. I don't want to be second best anymore. It's not that simple, he argued. It can be so simple if you want it to be. I told him, you just need to figure it out. So then she runs away from their hotel room after having told him, you need to pick Tash or me. Chapter 30, she runs to her sister Nicola's house and she starts complaining. And then, because she's in such a bad mood, even though she doesn't normally fight with her sister, they have a huge fight. And finally, Marnie calls out Nicola's husband Mitch for being so lazy. Marnie says, what I want to know is, where's Mitch in all this? I asked, feeling myself sneer, feeling the sick, satisfying heat of years of swallowed comments finally coming out. When he gets home from work and locks himself in the office, when he's on a golf trip, or when it's time for the bedtime song, or for Layla, the baby, to get her shots, or when the laundry needs to be hung out, or when you just need 5 minutes to yourself, where is he? What is he doing? What is the point of relying on someone and investing in them and supporting them, building them up, putting them first? Always, effing always, when you're not even on their radar. Why do you always have to come last? So she calls out Nicola for letting her husband use weaponized incompetence, because right now Nicola is sick and she's still taking care of the baby and she's clearly overwhelmed, but Mitch is nowhere to be seen. Nicola tells her, you need to calm down. Marnie says, I don't want to calm down. Finally, Nicola snaps back at her, you need to stop talking about women when you mean you. Marnie says, I'm the only woman I know who isn't tied up in this bullshit. Nicola's sneer was imperceptible. She lifted her cup and asked, aren't you? So she's pointing out that Marnie has a thing for Isaac and that she is caught up in the BS of men. I think this is probably the greatest part of the entire book right here. When she's thinking about Nicola's unfair situation of having to do all the domestic labor, Marnie starts saying, this is what it is to be a woman, to give life, to give support, to give herself, to give in. And in return she receives contempt, indifference, more requests, his load. She gives until she breaks, a spiderweb of cracks in her porcelain skin, holding still until she shatters into 1,000 tiny pieces. And men take the love, the support, the credit, our patience. They take and take and take what isn't theirs, what never was, what was designed to be shared, not stolen, until she is tired, angry, broken, and useless. Only then is she granted freedom from it all, the male gaze, the pedantry, the entitlement. They lose interest when she can no longer do anything for them, when they're no longer a doe-eyed plaything with pillowy cleavage and endless capacity. She's calling out the power imbalance between men and women in society and how men are positioned to simply use women for their convenience, but the care doesn't go the other way. And she uses the example of Mitch and Jesse, the two partners who are very toxic, and yet they're not supervillains or anything like that. They represent pretty normal relationships, weaponized incompetence in marriage, where men pretend that they can't do chores and stuff like that. It's all overly common. And Jesse, with his on and off again interest in Claud, making her feel unwanted at times, it's all too common. Chapter 31 is Claud comes back home to Marnie, and Claud is really messed up, and she's crying. Claud, who hadn't cried since 1997, was crying. So basically, she's having another huge fight with Jesse, and the rest of the chapter is just Marnie comforting Claud in her moment, and this is their reconciliation after their big fight. They finally get back together as friends and roommates again. I want to read some of this to show how broken up Claud is, because the next thing that happens is she goes running back to Jesse, which is bizarre. Claud says, it's not that I'm not enough, she said with a sniff. I love myself. I am enough. I am all I need. But what about what I want? I want more than enough. I want all of it from everyone all the time. She choked on her own breath. Marnie's trying to comfort her. You deserve everything you want and more than you need. She cried and cried. There was nothing I could say to fix her aching heart, so I didn't try. It was unsettling to see her come undone like this over a man like that. Eventually, Claude says, "I can't do it again, Marnie," she said. "I think you had it right. No relationships. I just end up feeling like this." So this moment she seems to swear off Min again, but in the next moment, she's going to go running back to Jesse again. Chapter 32. Marnie's texting Claude, saying, "Let's hang out, let's watch movies, and eat pizza and ice cream." And Claude says, "Would love to, but I'm out with Jesse tonight." So Marnie's just in shock and disbelief because we just spent a whole chapter of Claude crying over Jesse and swearing him off. And Claude is defensive. "Don't start, okay, Marnie. I didn't say anything." And Claude says, "I know you hate him, but I never asked for your opinion. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm happy, leave it alone. Not everyone wants what you want. God, can I live?" Marnie's confused. What had just happened, and so quickly? But instead of telling Claude, like, you should leave Jesse, he's just hurting you over and over, Marnie instead says, "I'm sorry, I want you to be happy. I'll be here whenever you need me." Her reasoning is, I couldn't tell her to leave him because he would do nothing but push her further into his grip. And so now that Marnie has had a fight with her sister Nicola, and she's had a fight with Claude, she says, "Finally, there was nothing left to do, no one left to cushion the impact of my empty house, no one left to call. Finally, I was truly, in every sense of the word now, no hyperbolic flourish for the love of drama, alone." So she's lost her sister Nicola, she's lost Claude, and she's lost Isaac as well. So she feels very down, and she also had a fight with Sam and Kit at work. So then there's a bunch of missed calls and unreplied texts from Isaac. He says, "You okay?" Marnie says, "I don't know what to say." Isaac, "Anything, come on, feller." And Marnie's not having it. She says, "What? Do you want me to ask how your day was? Want to hear about mine? Want me to ask about your girlfriend? Should I act like nothing happened? What should I say? Which girl am I supposed to be for you today?" Isaac, "I just miss you. I miss how it was." Marnie, "Do you still have a girlfriend?" Isaac, "Yes." Marnie, "Then what's the point?" So rather than fall for him again, she is firmly rejecting him here. She's not going to be his plaything anymore. Chapter 33, it's just Marnie by herself. She's alone, and she does a bunch of activities to try to forget about all the fights that she's had. Spin class, vegan Iranian cooking class, hot yoga, painting classes with wine, book clubs. I'd given up on waiting for Claude to come home. I didn't know if Nicola would ever speak to me again. Mom was too busy. Then she has some reconciliation with her boss, Kit, and Kit admits that things haven't worked out for him the way that he wants to either, so they share a moment of vulnerability, which makes them both a little bit uncomfortable, but it helps make her feel better. She says, "I was a bad feminist. I was one more bad experience with men away from committing to hand-on-heart misandry, a socialist in theory, a cynic masquerading as a realist." So after this reconciliation with Kit and being alone and rejecting everyone, especially Isaac, she says, "I was a coward and a wallflower, and I wanted to be better, and after months of lying to myself and the people in my life and to the whole world, I was ready finally to do the work." So she's going to be her own person now. Chapter 34, how clear-headed we become when we come to terms with ourselves. So here she makes up with Sam, her coworker, who's a horndog who keeps hitting on her, and they almost had sex, but he rejected her because she was drunk and clearly upset. "Let's call a truce," he said. "A truce. Friends, friends." So this chapter shows that Marnie has fixed her relationship with Kit and Sam, her boss and coworker, after blowing up on them at work. Chapter 35, Marnie shows up at Kit's house. Kit is her boss who owns the restaurant, and she wants to help him move because he's going through a breakup and he has to pack and move. And at first Kit rejects her and says, "I don't need your help," but she shows a lot of confidence and kind of forces her way into the helping role. And so this is like the big conclusion to their reconciliation. There we were, two people with no one left to lose, friends by circumstance and finally by choice. Chapter 36. This chapter is just about Marnie making up with her sister Nicola after their fight. You're an idiot, she laughed, but I like you and I love you. So now the sisters have made up again. So far she's made up with Kit, she's made up with Sam, and now she's made up with Nicola, her sister. Chapter 37. This is her fixing the financial aspect of the restaurant. She comes up with this idea to rent out the business during off hours for social gathering events for single lonely people like herself. So basically her idea is that she's going to use the restaurant that Kit owns, use the building as a hosting space and charge people money for it. And this is like going to be the financial saving grace for the restaurant, for Kit, for herself. Kit is skeptical, but Marnie says that she'll prove it to him by hosting a successful first event and that she'll do all the organizing and managing. Chapter 38, Marnie is responsible for hosting the successful first night, but Isaac chooses now to start begging her to get back together again, and she has to choose whether she's going to successfully host the first event night at the restaurant or whether she's going to pick Isaac again. Marnie decides to ignore Isaac because everyone else is counting on her. But when she goes home, she sees Claud crying again. So Claud has been betrayed by Jesse again. He's temporarily dumped her or whatever keeps going on with their relationship. It's not working. And then Claud asks Marnie, can you comfort me, basically? And Marnie is busy with hosting the event. So she says, I'm sorry you're hurt. I just can't sit and comfort you when you're going to go running back for more tomorrow. So she calls out Claud, calling out the cycle or pattern of abuse here. I wanted to think I would be on Claude's side no matter what, that some friendships were untarnishable. I wanted to believe that the love of a best friend endured long journeys on different roads, but for the first time I felt like giving up on her. Attempt after failed attempt to work out who I was and what I wanted and which people I could rely on, only for the answer to change every other minute. I was tired, I was burnt out, I was done. She tells Claude, I get it, you meet someone and your whole life becomes about them. We've all done that. But you lean on me when you need me, and I drop everything for you, and then you disappear, or you take the things he does to you out on me. So even though Claude is crying and wants comfort from Marnie rejects this, and she's just gonna go do her own thing hosting the restaurant event. Marnie says, I don't want to. I don't care what you do. I just can't keep watching you degrade yourself. Claude began to sputter a response, but I wasn't interested. I pulled my dress off the hanger on my door, picked up my bag, and left without looking back. So chapter 39, it's the big event night that Marnie has organized, but everything seems to be going wrong. Kit and Sam are in crisis mode, but then Marnie comes in with her girl boss attitude and just commands that everything work again, and so she fixes everything with her confidence. And so the event starts, and it's implied that it's going to be very successful because Marnie has a take charge attitude, and she won't be stopped by these little coincidences of things going wrong. So chapter 40, the pasta social was a success. It was a huge success thanks to Marnie, thanks to the fact that she ignored Isaac and that she also ignored Claude, and she just focused on making this event well. And then she gets back together with Claude as friends and roommates, so they reconcile for the last time in the book. Why not, she asked. Why is romantic love the benchmark? Why do you think it's more meaningful than any other? I'm not trying to downplay our friendship. I rushed to tell her, this, you and me, were magic. But a real partner, that's all we really want, isn't it? A life together. Okay, so now they are both on the same page. I held my hand out to Claude and she took it. It was the safest I'd ever felt. So blah, blah, blah. Everything was about as perfect as anything ever got. So chapter 41 is the scene where Isaac comes back and begs for Marnie one last time, but she rejects him, and she rejects the fantasy that he represents. Okay, so Isaac keeps trying to flirt with her. He shows up unexpectedly. He even says that he broke up with Tash, but none of this, no matter how hot he is, no matter the fact that he's not with Tash anymore, Marnie is not tempted to get back together with him. She sees the illusion for what it is. Isaac would love me, he would keep me safe, blah, 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 but I'm not going to get back together with him. No, I said. I heard it before I thought it. I don't think I can. So he keeps begging, Marnie, come on. I don't want to be anyone's second choice. You aren't. I would have left her for you at any point, he said fiercely. If you'd ever asked if I thought this could be a real thing, I would have left her in a second. But that's not good enough, I said gently. You didn't want me enough to leave on your own. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know, but I don't want to be anyone's backup option. He keeps begging. I know that isn't the cleanest way to start things, but that doesn't mean it can't go somewhere. Some of the best relationships start as friendships, but we weren't ever really friends. It was never for free. We are friends, he said. We used to talk about everything every day. We get each other. We're great together. You know everything about me. I shrugged my doubt. I don't trust you, I said, and the hypocrisy tasted bitter. You made a promise to someone you cared about, and you broke it every day talking to me. So he continues begging, and then finally he starts getting angry. So that's it, he asked. You got what you wanted, now you're not interested. And he gets angry at the rejection. That's crap, he said. You can't just destroy my life and walk away like nothing happened. You're punishing me for our mistakes. That's not fair. Okay, I don't know about you, but I'm not buying any of this at all. The fact that he's trying to take some moral high ground here after cheating on his girlfriend. Finally, he says, but I'm in love with you, and he's totally panicking. She says, no, you aren't. And the chapter concludes with her thoughts about, most of all, I knew that this was the right decision for both of us. I knew how ugly the reality of it would be, and the immediacy with which our spark would extinguish when the lust and adrenaline wore off. How quickly we grew bored of the thing we'd sworn always to want. Some gifts were left better in the wrapping. Okay, blah, blah, blah. It had always been so much more beautiful inside my head. So basically, she recognizes that this whole thing with Isaac was a fantasy, and she no longer wants to pursue it. It's pointless. Chapter 42, the last chapter in the book, she moves out into her own place, and Claude is visiting her, and she can't believe how terrible this place is. It is that bad, said Claude. She groaned as she swung open my fridge and found it empty but for 2 bottles of rosé, a jar of pickles, a wedge of brie with an indisputable bite taken out of it, and a carrot cake big enough for a party of 12. Why would you leave our lovely house for this hole? But it's mine, I sang, throwing my arms out wide and spinning around on the spot. So she's really happy that she has her own place now, and I guess this is part of her adult narrative arc where she's finally her own person. She's fixed all her problems, reconciled all her relationships, and she has her own place, and she also has a new dog named Minnie. She reflects on the psychic because the psychic's advice represents the future direction of their lives, and she's basically saying we don't need that stuff anymore. And the end of the book is that how strange it was to grieve something you never really had in the first place. It wasn't the friendship I missed because there wasn't one there to begin with. It was the daydream. Okay, and then this part is kind of weird. She says, maybe my birthday drink with Sam tomorrow would lead somewhere, or maybe it wouldn't. Like, why? I know he's not a rapist, which is okay, but why are we giving this horndog guy who harassed you the whole book a chance? You know, that doesn't make sense to me. Then she's thinking, maybe I'll move back with Claude, who knows? And as I climbed into bed beside Minnie, her dog, and pulled her into cuddle, I noted in my fuzzy champagne haze that I had everything I ever wanted, even if it looked nothing like I expected it to: a home, a dog, and a lemon tree. So her big conclusion is that she's happy with her life now, and she doesn't fantasize about romance anymore, but she's open to it if it happens to come along. The reviews for this book are generally really positive. This is the top review for the book, and it talks about the good old love Delulu, how this book helps dispel that and how that's relatable and important work to be done. A lot of the reviews are just like 1 or 2 lines, as you'll see on pretty much every book, and they don't tell you that much critically, but you can see this person also loved it. This person did not enjoy the book. Marnie was whining, selfish, annoying, and kept literally screaming, "Validate me." Her saving grace was creating a pasta night, and she just didn't like the fact that Marnie was very self-centered or whatever. The whole book takes place from Marnie's point of view, so maybe that's why she felt that way. Jamie says, "I loved the middle section, but I thought it lost steam in the end and just didn't go as far as it needed to." This is kind of vague. It doesn't really say what she expected. Charlotte says, "I am sorry, but the writing in this book was super cringe and I could not relate to any of its characters." This again is super vague. It doesn't give you any real feedback. Like, why is it super cringe? What was super cringe specifically? Teresa is an author, and she wrote a pretty long review, and she highlighted what I also thought was the best part of the book here. This is what it is to be a woman, to give life, to give support, to give herself, to give in, and in return she receives contempt, indifference, more requests, his load. She gives until she breaks, a spiderweb of cracks in her porcelain skin, holding still until she shatters into 1,000 tiny pieces. And men take the love, the support, the credit, our patience. They take and take and take what isn't theirs, what never was, what was designed to be shared, not stolen, until she's tired, angry, broken, and useless. Only then is she granted freedom from it all, the male gaze, the pedantry, the entitlement. They lose interest when she can no longer do anything for them, when they're no longer a doe-eyed plaything with pillowy cleavage and endless capacity. Teresa says, "Not just a novel of self-discovery, this is a joyful and hopeful novel about friendship, about creating your own village, and about discovering who you are and embracing that with gusto. Highly recommend with 5 stars. Isabel didn't like the book. 2 stars. She said, "I really wanted to like this book because I heard it was good, but sadly it wasn't for me. I found the cringy dialogue," another person saying it's cringy, but with no specific examples. "Everything just felt so unrealistic. I also found Marnie's personal growth journey in the time frame of a few months really unbelievable, considering how annoying she was." So she's not the only one to say cringy and Marnie's whiny and annoying, but they don't really give any specific examples. Samuel says, "Crushing is just as good as Novak's first novel, No Hard Feelings. Follows Marnie. She struggles with her latest breakup and potential new love interest, not to mention her complicated friendships and feeling at a loss with her work." So, since I have not read No Hard Feelings, this review is a bit hard to understand. I enjoyed most was the immensely flawed protagonist. Marnie makes rash and terrible decisions, but was also healthy and smart. This makes the character feel real. There's no easier answer. Grace said, 5 out of 5 stars. I felt personally attacked by this book. 10 out of 10 though. Maybe the best book I've ever read. These one-line reviews don't really give you anything to go off of. Another 5-star review. This is the most comforting, relatable, and wholesome book I've ever read. I could read this over and over. This is how to be independent, happy, hopeful, and alone without being lonely. The happy ending is her on her own without a man, and it's everything. The literary equivalent of the Barbie movie. I loved this. Only one review has the word cheat in it, and she says, "I bloody hated Isaac though. I know we were supposed to be. I needed to just make that point. He's the biggest twat. Men who emotionally cheat on their partners are shit. Heads sorry, not sorry." Only 7 reviews use the word cheating. 7 out of 700. That's about 1% of reviews mention the word cheating. Shima says, "Read this for the giggly flirtation, very questionable ethics. Do not read this if you want a straight-up romance novel to avoid reading about cheating regardless of how it's handled." My thoughts. This book was a good 4-star bingeable, voicey fun, serial monogamist in her late 20s discovers she has no idea how to be alone. Cute, flirty, texting situation if you ignore the huge ethical issue of cheating. Ravina liked the book but did not love it. Resembled He's Just Not That Into You, or Everything I Know About Love. Here she says, "Her relationship with Isaac was all sorts of wrong. I guess it was interesting to unpack this dynamic of platonic friendships, but as the book states, this never was an attempt of a platonic friendship. It was straight up cheating." Amara says, this book took me nearly a year to read purely because I was confused if I was meant to be rooting for the cheating relationship. But once I realized I wasn't meant to, I started to appreciate it for what it is. Chanel says, I'm not into books that feature emotional cheating. 5 hours in and she's still messing around with a guy who is in a relationship. Yeah, I guess they did not finish it because she does consummate it with physical cheating as well. Paige says, I enjoyed this while I was reading it, but the cheating, slimy behavior icked me throughout. I was devouring it, but it did make me feel unsettled, mixed emotions. Crushing is not really about romance or cheating. It is about how desire can replace a real life for a while. Marnie uses Isaac to avoid her problems, and once that fantasy ends, he stops mattering. By the end, she fixes her life and turns him down, not because of the damage done, but because she no longer needs him. The book is less interested in punishment than in showing what happens when wanting finally stops, similar to Green Dot.